Greetings. I welcome you all to this wonderful lesson. So, like I told you, this is what we are looking at. It is called a structure of a nephron. So, you now discover that the basic function of the kidney is the nephron. Once we understand what gets to happen in the nephron, then we've understood the whole topic, or rather the whole function of the kidney. So we know that the purpose or the function of the kidney is to remove urea, excess salt and excess water from the blood so that it gets to form urine, and it forms urine. That's what you need to get and understand. Like I always tell you, this is a private video and you don't need to share to any person unless I share it like the way I've done in the group. I guess you've got a pen, paper, a book where you're writing these things from. And most important thing, I guess you've drawn this. So in my explanation, I just want to start from the scratch. This is how it is. There is this loop that you are able to see. This loop, we get to call it the loop of what? The loop of, let me say, this is called the loop of Henry. So this is the loop of Henry. Then we've got this thing that is here. Have you seen this part that is there? That part, that is called the Bowman's capsule. So we get to call it the what? We get to call it the Bowman's capsule. That is the name that is given to it. And then this thing that is there, have you seen this thing? We get to call it the glomerulus. Glomerulus, like this. That is the name that is given to it. These are important parts that you need to understand. Then I want you to know that we've got these parts where these ones are what? Where these ones are convoluted. Have you seen? These ones are convoluted. So this part here, the first part where these ones are convoluted, we get to call this part as the what? As the first convoluted. You say first convoluted what? Convoluted tubule. So this is the name that is given to it. Then this second part, I'm going to explain to you the functions of this first convoluted part. Then even this one that is there, this is the second, we get to call it the second what? Convoluted. These ones that I've labeled, these are the ones that are most important. And even as you get to answer questions in an exam, you just need to understand them this way. This is now what we get to flow, blood gets to flow. So we are calling it the blood what? The blood flow now. This is the blood flow. Then this one that is here, we get to call it the what? The correcting duct or tube. So these are the this is how we get to label the structure of a nephron. I guess you've now understood, isn't it? It is just as simple as this. The diagram may look confusing, but this is something that is so simple. So blood is flowing here. You know and understand that, okay, for these processes to occur, there must be, for urine to be formed, we need now to understand the structure of a nephron. So I'm going to explain everything here, and I want your total attention. So these structures, I guess you've studied through these structures, you are able to understand them. So when I say that from the glomerulus, I guess you know, okay, glomerulus, it is that part on top. When I say the Bowman's capsule, this is the part here that gets to hold the glomerulus. These things that are there. And we've got the first convoluted tubule and the second convoluted tubule. Then we've got the loop of Hensley. This part here, this is called the loop of Hensley. Then we've got this part that is here. This is called the correcting duct. I just want you to understand this, because once I start explaining, it is the information that you have on these things that will enable you get and understand the concept. Remember what I told you. I guess there are certain things that I'd told you. I told you to say that the excretion of what? So say the excretion here. So excretion in the what? Excretion in the kidney. This is called the kidney nephron. So the excretion in the kidney nephron occurs in what? I'll say occurs in 4 stages. It gets to occur in 4 what? In 4 stages. And you need to make sure that you understand these 4 stages that I'm going to explain just here. This is something important, and I just pray that you are going to understand this. These 4 stages that I'm going to explain here, the first part or the first stage that gets to happen, we get to call that as the pressure filtration. So we call it the what? We call it pressure filtration. We can say that is the pressure what? Pressure filtration. Another name that we can use there, we can call it ultra what? Filtration. So we can say ultra filtration. We can call it pressure or ultra filtration. That is the first stage that gets to be done. The second stage is what we get to call the selective. From the word selective, you know that not everything is reabsorbed. So selective what? Selective reabsorption. We get to call it the selective reabsorption. So it is the selective reabsorption. The second stage is what we get to call osmoregulation. Have you seen? This is called osmoregulation. So I'm going to explain what all these stages mean and how urine is formed from all these stages. So I just want you to follow me clearly and nicely. I just want your total attention. Then away from this, the last one is what we get to call secretion. It is called what? It is called secretion. This is the last stage that you have to understand. So how many stages are we having all together? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 stages that get to happen in the kidney nephron. And this is a structure that you have to understand. I don't know if you people are getting me. The most important thing is understanding what I'm teaching. So let me now explain these stages now one by one so that you try to get this, you try to understand the concept. So the first thing that gets to happen is what we get to call what? The first one, we call it the what? We call it the ultrafiltration. This is the name that is given to it, ultrafiltration. So first of all, we need to understand what is ultrafiltration. I want you to understand that ultrafiltration, this is the what? This is the filtration. So you need to understand that this is the filtration. You need to get that it is the what? It is the filtration of what? Filtration of small, so I'll say filtration of small molecules. It is a filtration of small what? A filtration of small molecules. These small molecules gets to include what? We've got water, part of the small molecules. We've got what we get to call the urea. We've got what we get to call the mineral salts. So the mineral salts, I will say the mineral salts. We also have the glucose. These are what? These are small molecules. So these ones, so the process of filtration of small molecules from the what? We get to say from, I will say from what? From glomerulus. So from the glomerulus, so I will say from the glomerulus, into the what? Into the Bowman's capsule. Into the what? Into the Bowman's what? Capsule. This is the first stage. I guess you are able to. So if I tell you to explain this, you tell me the first stage is the filtration of small molecules filtration, I guess you know, where these ones get to dissolve now. So there are particles here on top of the glomerulus. Here on the glomerulus, we've got the water, the urea, we've got the mineral salts and glucose. So they get to dissolve or diffuse into the Bowman's what? Into the Bowman's capsule. So they are going to filtrate into the what? Bowman's capsule. This is the Bowman's capsule that is there. So this is what gets to happen. You discover that this one is caused by pressure in the what? In the glomerulus. For this to happen, there must be high pressure in the glomerulus. So from the glomerulus there, they go into the what? Into the Bowman's capsule. So you now discover that blood that gets to come from the arteries, it is coming from the arteries. It is at what? It is at high pressure. So it is coming at high pressure because this is the flow from the what? From the arteries. It is a kind of flow that comes from the what? From the arteries. And during this process, you discover that the red blood cells and large molecules remain inside the glomerulus. So whenever we are talking about this process, there are certain things you need to note. So you need to note that the red blood cells, I'll say RBC, these are the red blood cells. So I'll tell you to say that the red blood cells and these markers are misbehaving. So I'll say and what? And I'll say and the what? And the large, I'll say and the large what? Large molecules. And the large molecules remain what? Remain inside. So they get to remain inside the what? Inside the glomerulus. So inside the glomerulus, this is what gets to happen. So these ones, they are going to do what? They are going to remain. So this is the first part that you need to get. So the liquid that is collected in the Bowman's capsule is now called the glomerulus what? Filtrate. So I've told you to say that the liquid that is what? That is collected in the what? In the Bowman's capsule. Where is the Bowman's capsule? I guess you know this. Bowman's capsule is there. So the liquid that is collected in the Bowman's capsule, that liquid is what is called as the glomerulus filtrate, because it is filtrating now. Have you seen? It is undergoing the process we are calling filtration, where they move from this part from the glomerulus into the Bowman's capsule. So we get to call that as the what? Glomerulus filtrate. You can find such questions in an exam. So I will say second point, I'm going to do it like this. I don't know why these markers are misbehaving. Second point, I'm going to tell you that the liquid. So you need to understand that the liquid that does what? That is corrected. So the liquid that is corrected in the what? I'll say in the Bowman's capsule. So the liquid that is corrected in the Bowman's what? Bowman's capsule. So I'll say in the Bowman's capsule. In the Bowman's capsule is called what? I'll say is called the glomerulus. So I'll say glomerulus filtrate. It is called the glomerulus filtrate. So this is what we have to understand. These are certain things that you need to pay attention to. So I want you to get this and I want you to understand this. So the glomerulus filtrate is drained from the what? From the Bowman's capsule by the what? Renal tubule. So the renal tubule that we get to talk about, when we say, okay, these are the renal tubule, these are the ones that are here. Have you seen? I told you that to say that this part that is here, where these things are called like this, let me show it so that you see it. This part that is here. So this part that is here that is called this tubule. Have you seen? It is going like this. So you discover that now the glomerulus filtrates now get to be drained into this tube now. They get to be drained now into that tube, which is now taking us, for this process to happen now, there must be something that we get to call the selective reabsorption now, which is taking us to the second stage now. So after understanding this, we are now going to the second what? The second stage. I guess you are able to get this, you are able to understand these things that I'm explaining to you. So the second one, we are calling it what? The second one, I'm calling it what? The selective. So we call this as what? Selective reabsorption. We are calling this as the selective reabsorption. So under the selective reabsorption, this one that is here, this is the reabsorption of what? Useful substances from the glomerulus filtrate in the what? Renal tubule into the bloodstream. So the selective reabsorption that we get to talk about, you need to understand that is the what? This one, I don't know why these things are misbehaving. So I'm telling you to say that the selective reabsorption here, this is the what? This is the reabsorption. I'll say this is the reabsorption. I'll say it is the what? It is the reabsorption of useful. So I'll say it is the reabsorption of what? Useful substances. The reabsorption of what? Useful substances. From where? I'll say from the what? From the glomerulus. From the glomerulus what? From the glomerulus filtrates. So from the glomerulus filtrate in the what? In the renal. So I'll say in the renal tubule. So that's the renal tubule. So in the renal tubule, into the what? Into the bloodstream. So into the what? Into the bloodstream. This is what gets to happen. So this is the reabsorption now, where those glomerulus filtrates now get to enter now the what? The bloodstream. So they are going to enter now the bloodstream. And you need to understand that this one gets to occur in those folded regions. So where are we having those folded regions? It is here, this part here, and this other part. This is where we've got the folded regions now. So this selective reabsorption gets to happen in those two parts here. We've got this part that gets to be here and this part that is there. So there's I've told you that it occurs under two parts. So I've told you to say that it occurs, this one, it does what? It occurs. It occurs where? I'll say it occurs mainly in the what? I'll say mainly in the what? Mainly in the folded what? Folded regions. It gets to occur mainly in the folded regions. The good part I've mentioned. The first what? Convoluted tubule. So the first part, that first part, so when I say the first, I will say first what? First convoluted. Convoluted, I say convoluted what? Tubule. The first convoluted tubule. Now, what happens now in terms of this reabsorption? You discover that we get to reabsorb all what? Glucose. So at first convoluted tubule there, we get to do what? Reabsorb. I don't know if you are getting this. Reabsorb all what? All glucose. I'll say reabsorb all glucose. All glucose is reabsorbs. And some what? And some water. I'll say and some water. And some what? And some salt. And some salt. This is what is happening at the first convoluted tubule, this part here. So that is what is happening at this first one that is there. Have you seen? But when you go to the second convoluted tubule, you need to understand that here we get to absorb salt and water. This is where we just get to absorb salt and water. So at the second convoluted tubule, this one that is there, we get to reabsorb what? Second one that is there. You discover that we get to absorb just the what? Absorbs the what? The I will say the water and salt. Water and what? Water and salt. That is what gets to happen. So I've told you that is selective reabsorption only gets to happen on those folded regions. The first convoluted tubule and the second one. And I've told you what happens at the first convoluted tubule and second convoluted what? Tubule. I've explained to you what gets to happen on those parts. After understanding this, you're now going to discover that what is happening during this selective reabsorption. So under this same second part or second stage, we are calling the what? The selective reabsorption. You are now going to discover that glucose is reabsorbed by a process that we get to call what? Glucose is diffusion. So I will say that I will start with what I will call what? Water. So I mentioned water. So I'll start with what? I'll start with water. So you need to understand that water is what? Water is reabsorbed. Water is reabsorbed by a process called what? So I will say by a process called osmosis. So they may ask you a question that during selective reabsorption in the nephron, water is absorbed by which process? Water is absorbed by filtration. Then we've got the glucose. The glucose, it is by what? Glucose by what? I would say glucose by diffusion, by the process called diffusion. So glucose is by what? Glucose is by diffusion. And when we go now to these parts that we get to call mineral salts, these ones. So mineral salts, mineral what? Mineral salts is by what? Is by active transport. So the mineral salts is by active what? Active transport. This is what we need to know. So that one is by what? Is by active transport. I don't know if you are getting this. All these things that I'm explaining, you need to make sure that you understand them. This is the reason why I'm taking my time to make sure that you understand them. Even as we get to move forward, you need to know and understand all these things that gets to happen. We now go to the third stage. So the third stage is what we get to call what? We get to call it as osmoregulation. Osmoregulation. So osmoregulation. We get to call it osmoregulation. So you ask yourself, what is osmoregulation? When we are talking about osmoregulation, water, osmosis, regulating, managing. So osmoregulation, this is the regulation. You need to know that it is the what? If I tell you to say, what is osmoregulation? This is the regulation of what? This is the regulation of water levels in the body. Regulation of what? Water what? Water levels. Water levels in the body. I will say in the what? In the body fluids. In the body fluids. So the regulation of water levels in the body fluids is what we term as what? Osmoregulation. This is termed as osmoregulation. Now, the next question that you need to have now, where does osmoregulation take place from? So when we are talking about osmoregulation, which is the regulation of water levels in the what? In the body fluids, you need to understand that this one takes place from where? I will say takes place from, I will say it takes place in the what? In the, I will say in the loop of what? In the loop of Hensley. This part. So osmoregulation, the regulation of water levels in the body fluids, gets to take place from the what? from that loop of veins. So that is the name. I don't know how you get to pronounce this. We get to differ in pronunciation. But the good part is that you must be able to write the correct spelling. That's the most important thing. So you discover that if water levels in the body is little, you discover that now an hormone that is being secreted. And the name of that hormone is what we call it antibiotic hormone, which is ADH. So let me write down this point, very important. So what I'm telling you is that if water levels in the body are little, if you don't have a balanced water levels in your body, you discover that you now push the brain to secrete a certain hormone by a certain gland that is called pituitary gland. So that pituitary gland is, so you discover that this gland that is called, we get to call it this is called, let me write it properly. So it is called what? Pituitary gland. So this gland now is going to secrete an hormone. The name of that hormone that is being secreted, the name of that hormone is, we get to call it what? We get to call it antibiotic hormone. That is the name of the hormone that gets to be secreted, which is also known as ADH. That is the name of that hormone. Where in the brain, so you discover that this process, osmoregulation, it causes water to be absorbed from the glomerulus filtrate into the what? Into the surrounding cells. This is what happens. But if the water levels in the body are enough, no hormone is secreted, and we are going to have a high volume or a huge volume of what? Of dilute urine that is going to be produced. So that is what is gonna happen. I don't know if you are getting this. So these things, you just need to make sure that you know them and understand them. We now go to the last process. The last process is so simple. The last process is what? The last process is what we now get to call the secretion now. We call it the what? The secretion. What is this same secretion that we are talking about? This is now the what? The removal. So we are calling it as the what? The removal of urine. So it is called the removal of urine from the what? From the kidney. So from the what? From the kidney through the what? Through the what? The correcting. That last part that is there. Through the what? Through the correcting duct there. That last part. And the what? Ureter. I told you the function of the ureter now. So this is now where we now get to remove now the urine gets to come out. So you discover that the urine that gets to come out, that urine that gets to form is a mixture, is a what? Is a mixture of what? Is a mixture of what we get to call urea. It is also a mixture of what we get to call excess what? Excess water, and what we get to call excess salt. So this is what we have to know. I want you to get this and I want you to understand this. I guess we are even writing down notes here. So urine is just a mix of urea, excess water, and excess salt. And you discover that this urine is then passed through the urinary bladder. It is temporarily stored there before it is passed now away, out now. That is now what we call excretion, which is now the removal of those waste metabolic products now from the body of an organism now outside now. This is now the actual excretion that we get now to talk about. I guess this is now simple. So you conclude and say it is then now what? So you conclude and say that the urine, you say the urine, I guess you're writing down notes. The urine is what? The urine is passed. You say the urine is what? Is passed through, say the urine is passed through the urinary bladder. So this word there is urinary. So pass through the urinary what? Pass through the urinary what? Urinary bladder where it is stored. So you say where it is what? Where it is stored. So you say where it is what? Where it is stored temporary. It is stored there what? Temporary. So it is stored there temporary before being released outside or before passed out. That's what you have to understand. So I guess that is something that is not that difficult. It's something that is so easy to get. Away from this, so these are the 4 stages that gets to happen whenever we are talking about the structure of a nephron. I guess I've explained this and we need to make sure that we know it. So you just need to know this and understand. Away from this, there is what we call kidney failure. So we go to another part called kidney what? There's what we call kidney failure and treatment. So kidney failure and treatment. You need to understand that kidney failure is caused by a lot of things. So I'll say kidney failure. So I'll say causes of kidney failure. So causes of what? Causes of kidney failure. What are certain causes of kidney failure? So what are certain causes of kidney failure? So when we are talking about the kidney failure, you need to note that it can be caused by poisoning. It can be caused by what? It can be caused by poisoning, where maybe if your food has been poisoned, you discover that you can experience some kidney failure. Aside knowing that, you also need to get and understand this one, that is accident. This specifically, this is what? This is injury. So we say injury to the what? Injury to the kidney. So injury to the kidney can cause kidney failure. Aside knowing that, you also need to understand that even some drug abuse can cause kidney failure. And we can also talk of what? Infections. Even infections can cause what? Even infections are able to cause some kidney failure. So these are certain causes of kidney failure. And how can you treat now the kidney failure now? So kidney failure can be treated in 2 ways. So let's go now to treatment. How can you now treat the kidney failure? So I've told you that we've got 2 ways in which we can treat the kidney failure. The first one, there is what we get to call the kidney transplant. So there's what we call the kidney transplant. So kidney transplant, this is a surgical, let me say, where a person, like you go under surgery. So surgery, let me say, surgery operations, where a kidney gets to be gotten from one person to the other person. So you get this kidney, you take it to another person, and we need to make sure that those kidneys are compatible, because if they are not, there are some things that can be involved. So we have to make sure that everything has been tested, the blood and the like, everything should be tested, so that we avoid some things, consequences. This can even lead to death if not properly handled. So, and the last part is where we get to use now what we get to call the kidney machine. So we use the kidding what? Kidding machine. So this is now the last one that I want you to know. So I can also put this, it is just one and the same. So I'm going to end with this. This is what we are supposed to know and understand. So my work now is very simple. I just want to give you a simple exercise that I want you to do. I want you to research on this. So it's a simple exercise before I give you the main one. How to use a kidding machine. So explain. So it's just like a simple question. I want you to research on this. These are online lessons, so I know that you've got your phone there. How to do what? How to use a kidding machine. Explain how to use. Explain how to do what? How to use a kidding machine. Explain how to use a kidding what? A kidding machine. Just the same here. So just one and the same. This is where we are going to end from. I guess you've gotten one or two things from here. Thank you so much for your attention, and I guess you are following instructions whereby no one is allowed to share this video without my permission. The people that you are sharing it to, let them join us. So let's end here. Let me try to give you certain questions that you are going to do. So this is just an assignment, and you just need to submit it before Friday. So before Friday, I need answers. I'll give you a simple exercise that you are going to do.